And now Gary, Kathy, Mr. Keitel, and I are all available to answer any of your questions, respond to comments, and accept your input. So thank you.
So Joe, just help me understand. So if we did the right-of-way, you brought up a good point. That's a very busy intersection, and the traffic can be pretty going pretty fast if they have the green light. So would it require the guardrails that we've put in further west because it's so close to the roadway? Or if we did the boardwalk, we wouldn't have to have the guardrails?
It's an excellent question, and one that we could debate back and forth. When we did the original 2 segments of trail next to Route 100, we had as our protection, our barrier, burning bushes. And for the life of me, I would always tell users when they ask questions about it is, go the opposite direction of traffic. So you're facing traffic. Traffic's not coming from behind. Oftentimes I'd see it, oftentimes I wouldn't. And ultimately the safety factor led us to basically go with the wood-backed guardrail. So I think paralleling Route 100 just without the guardrail would ultimately be a less expensive project. But in the end, I think you're absolutely right. We're going to end up having to put some kind of guardrail system in to protect the users. My guess is then that the boardwalk will be more expensive up front, but I think if we compare the cost, they may be awfully close.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, Joe, I got a couple of questions. I'm looking at this just so you know what my reference is, okay?
Yes, sir.
I've been on that section of the trail that comes off of the overpass, the pedestrian overpass. It ends, I think, just a little bit to the east of the main driveway that goes into Wildwood Plaza. Is that not true?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now looking at this layout, there seems to be a green space that proceeds for some distance down towards the Mobile on the Run that has a distance between Highway 100 and Old Manchester. Is that property not available for use in this particular situation?
There's a bit of a grade issue there, and by Mercy, that medical office building, there's a system of retaining walls already in place to accommodate the slope that existed. And so we have limited space there, and from the perspective of the department, it'd be great if we could work up through there, but I just don't think the slope and existing improvements will allow it. But we'll put that on our list from the public input session tonight, and Mr. Keitel will have a much better answer for you than I just gave you.
Do you foresee that MoDOT would be a problem in giving us permission to proceed along their right-of-way?
Our initial contacts with MoDOT, and these were in a series of years since we initially started the discussion on this project, has always been favorable. They've been a good partner. As long as we don't require them to guarantee the location for perpetuity, we generally don't have any issues.
So in other words, they could come back and reclaim that if they ever wanted to widen the road or something, right?
Yes. But as we found, there's always ways to work together to achieve a common goal. But an item later on the agenda, the Greenway Phase Six, we applied for a grant with the state of Missouri. One of the conditions was perpetuity. The state wouldn't recognize that condition, and the grant was not funded. So we're not asking for that grant, that type of grant here. So I don't think we'll have an issue, hopefully, with funding if we do apply and the committee concurs. But like I say, I can't guarantee anything with the state until we submit a plan, though.
Yeah, no, I understand that completely. I just think that for safety reasons, that section of the trail that currently is along the closest edge of the highway to the north, to the south side of the highway, always looks scary to me. I mean, even though there's a rail and there's bushes and all that, those folks are awfully close to that road, and it wouldn't be above somebody going through that rail and take out a bunch of people one time. It just makes me nervous.
If I had my preference, we'd be as far away from the roadway surface as possible, but I will guarantee you the guardrail was rated at the speed that's posted for the highway. Now, saying that, we know everybody doesn't travel the posted speed on Route 100 for the most part.
Really? Did you notice that? Did the officer hear that? Oh.
Rich, what is the intended material to be used for the boardwalk?
Well, there's a number of options. We had great success in Phase 1 of Community Park with the composite material. Recently, we talked about a pedestrian bridge between the manors at the Meadows of Cherry Hills and the manors at the enclaves of Cherry Hills. And there was an IPE type wood, which is very strong. I understand it comes from South America. And then there's just your standard wood that we've used for decks, cedar, that type of thing.
And do you anticipate, so the reason I was asking the question just to determine going forward the amount of upkeep that you're going to have, and obviously eBay or composite are pretty durable, and if you have people using bicycles and things over it, it's a little bit different than perhaps using some of the other woods that you might need upkeep, so, okay.
With your permission, we'll basically add that to the public input and look at the different options and try to understand what requires less maintenance or more.
Joe?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I love the idea of this project over here. It's great for the people of Ward 7, but it's great for just everyone that takes advantage of the trails, and it's a connection that we desperately need in that section there because it allows a seamless connection with our trails and those of Ellisville. I like the idea of it being a boardwalk. It's something unique, something different. As John Gregnani knows, I'm from Brooklyn, and we have the Coney Island Boardwalk. So we just need to add some sand and water, and we'll have a little beach there. But it is great. I do think a railing or something would help, especially if it's going to be at the level or close to the road to protect cars. And the guardrail that is along 100, I know we add on after, and it's a solid wood there, very thick guardrail there, blends in with the area.
It is a steel back wood guardrail system,
Yes.
so there is hidden in all of that what we hope will protect anybody that either hits it or is behind it.
Yeah, I think, if it's continuing something like that, or at least just for even if they're bicyclists or, a young bicyclist riding their bike, that they don't go off the boardwalk and, onto that slope there.
Yes, sir.
All right, so appreciate it. This is great. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, I just have one quick question. Maybe you can't answer this, but I'm going to ask anyway. If MoDOT were to ever reclaim that right-of-way, would they reimburse us for the destruction of our trail?
My assumption would be no, but that'll be part of tonight's public input, and we'll provide an answer as soon as we can.
Any other questions by the committee?
Madam Chair, I would ask, with your permission, that if anyone in the audience would like to speak on this particular item, this would be a great time for that to occur.
Carrie, do you have any participation cards? Kathy, do you have any? Would anybody in the audience like to speak to this issue? No?
It's a stretch, but thank you for the consideration.
So before we get into our action items, does any member of the public like to make a comment on any topic related to the committee? So then we'll go into our first action item, which is planning matters, and there's 3 items for consideration. The first one is overview of the committee's protocols, meeting, daytime, and other items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, for a number of years we've seen turnover or transition on our committee members, and I found that what one committee may do is not necessarily the process or protocol that the other does. And so this particular item on tonight's agenda is just to kind of give you some ideas of the things we do as a committee over the course of any given year, and then the procedures that we have followed, which are always subject to change based upon the committee's preference, the leadership roles, which we address tonight with the election of Ms. McCutcheon, and then finally, general considerations. And so if there any of those items that you would like to discuss, we certainly be available tonight. And Ms. McCutcheon, speaking to age, is one of the senior members of the committee now. And
Thank
so,
you for that.
from that perspective, she may be able to shed some light as well if you have questions.
Two of the items that we generally discuss when we have new members of the committee, one is starting time. Right now it's 6:30. So I'm asking if 6:30 is suitable to everybody else, or would you need a change in time? And then the other option is we started having the committee meeting in here because at the time, this was the only location for live streaming. We do now have live streaming in the committee room or county community room. There you go. So if you all would like to move back to the community room, then I need to hear a motion in a second.
I would move back there. I think it's a more warm and fuzzy location than this ginormous place up here. So it's also down on the same level with the people rather than us sitting up here looking down at them. So if at all possible, I know that's not always the case. It may be that it's not possible. I think we should make an effort to move back to the community room. So I will move that we move back to the community room if at all possible.
Second? Mr. Remy seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
Thank you. The only other item on this list I just would like to highlight is, starting in September, this committee, along with the other two committees of City Council, will begin the budget process for the upcoming fiscal year. Generally, October of each year is when the department presents its budget, both for planning and parks, to the committee. We will provide you some information prior to that meeting, preferably and typically in September. And then that is also the time for you all to think about any projects or items that you've noticed over the past year or since your election that you would like to be addressed or at least discussed as part of the future budget. So I guess I'm asking you to put your thinking caps on, and by the time we get to September, maybe we can have a quick discussion and then we can go from there. So thank you.
The next action item is acceptance of Taylor Road Extension for Public Maintenance, Ward 5.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, there are two memorandums that have been prepared for this particular item tonight. The first and more typical is the memorandum from the Department of Public Works that was authored by the Director of Public Works, Rick Brown. The second is a memorandum authored by the Department of Planning and Parks. The explanation why this particular committee is being requested to consider the dedication and acceptance of Taylor Road Extension relates to a timing factor. The road, for all intents and purposes, has been completed for an extended period of time, months, but has been closed to through traffic due to concerns on the city's part about the completion of what we would consider the safety improvements, things like speed limit signs, warning signs, street lights, pedestrian markings in the right-of-way, etc. Those have been completed, and they've been completed for now probably 2 to 3 months, but the road remained closed. Part of that was the concern of the development entities, again, two developers or the home builders in the Brightleaf subdivision, Fisher Frictal and Consort Homes. Their concern related to the process we follow with our subdivision and development regulations. Quite simply, we ask the developer to build the road, and then we escrow the full cost of the road to guarantee it gets completed. We do provide partial releases as the road reaches certain stages of completion, but at the end of that process, we always do a punch list before final acceptance to ensure that all deficiencies, all damage is corrected. Fisher Frictal and Consort Homes are concerned that if the road is open to through traffic and there is an expectation that traffic volumes will be not significant, but high, that at the end of the development cycle, the 192 home sites, they would have to basically replace the road or pay for it again a third time. The reason the departments are bringing this forward are several-fold, and Mr. Brown's memorandum and the Department of Planning and Parks memorandum touch on those. First and foremost, the Metro West Fire Protection District, through its fire marshal, has requested the opening so as to have a second point of ingress and egress to the development, and if construction is such, another way to reach North Route 109 past Route 100. Secondly, there is a growing request amongst the residents of Brightleaf subdivision for the opening. What they're experiencing is now a one-way in and one-way out, and if they want to go north on Route 109, they have to go through the construction zone to achieve that, which has added not hours to their travel, but certainly minutes, and adds just more cars into an area that is already tight, so to speak, with the construction and the amount of traffic. The other components, as described, again, relate to the congestion associated with the construction project at Route 100 and Route 109. This particular road could provide relief to that area and lessen some of the congestion and queuing that's occurring there, that's added time to commutes either northbound on Route 109 or southbound on Route 109. So there are rationales both from the residents in Brightleaf subdivision, from others experiencing delays due to construction at the interchange of Route 100, Route 109, and probably most importantly and most pressing, the desire of the Metro West Fire Protection District. To accomplish all of this, an inspection was done of the current condition of Taylor Road extension. A punch list was generated by the Department of Public Works and provided to the development entity. Those would be required to be completed before full acceptance by the city. But both the Director of Public Works and the Director of Planning and Parks is respectfully requesting that the committee endorse the acceptance and dedication of Taylor Road extension once all punch list items are addressed for full public maintenance and use.
John?
Yeah, you just said a whole lot of things that just brought up a whole lot of questions. Okay, first of all, there is an existing paved surface that's completed all the way out to 109 now,
Yes,
but it's not been completely refurbished in the sense that it's not built to the current standards that would be expected when the project is completed. Is that right?
well, there's an existing segment of Etherton Road, so that's, you could do that area by Sandalwood Creek and
Correct.
Hickory Manor. That's the Etherton Road. Now, it's not built to the new standard of Taylor Road extension, but it does have two full lanes of travel surface. It's striped in the center, striped on the edges, and along the east side, there are sidewalks.
Well, the reason I asked this question is because rather than have the builder complete it entirely in its entirety right this moment, is with the understanding that it would be refurbished at the end of their project so that it now meets all the criteria without having to have them come back and do it twice. I mean, I can understand their concern about doing that, but if the road can be used in its current condition without having to do anything else to it at the moment, that may resolve that particular issue. However, there's another issue that I see developing here that's going to be a problem for the Public Safety Board, which, as you know, I spent a lot of time on. This is going to become a cut-through road, which is the same problem we were worried about with the Pond Grover Loop Road. It's inevitable that that's going to happen, and the problem is we're going to get a lot of complaint where people want the road open. You got to watch what you wish for, okay? And so there are going to be a lot of people complain about the traffic that's going to be on this road when that happens. Are they prepared for that?
Well, I've talked to several of the residents in the Brightleaf subdivision, one in particular, Bill Gaffin, who's contacted, I believe, both Ms. McCutcheon and Mr. Bertolino. And I've explained to him, part of the hesitancy early on back in May was just what you said. You know what you're going to get, because it's not going to be the street where you can walk your dogs on. It's going to be a street that has traffic on it, and you're going to have to basically be aware that the traffic will bring some changes. They seem to understand that, and they've continued to ask for the road to be opened so that they can have access to northbound Route 109.
Do we know what the speed limit is going to be posted as on that road?
25.
25? Okay.
Crystal?
I concur with what Dr. Grignani just said, is the cut-through component. So it kind of leads me into the FD request, and I read the memo. So just help me understand, when they come through Taylor and when they hit 109, they're forced to go north, am I correct?
Yes, toward the roundabout.
So they would have to go down to the roundabout to come back through to the construction zone. So I'm having trouble with the FD having 2 access points because the hospitals are not that way, and they would have to access the roundabout and come back through the construction point. So I think that argument is a little questionable to me, putting big equipment through that area. I get access as something, but I don't know if that's strong enough at that point. The second thing that I have is, the relief from the congestion from the construction. Again, are we opening ourselves up to a bigger problem? Have we done some traffic studies in that area to show if there is 20 cars lined up, everybody gets the word on social media to cut through there? How much time is it going to congest later down the road and cause more problems? Because people are they're booking at that point. And then they're trying to slow down for the roundabout. So I'm just a little concerned there too of how do they get out of that subdivision?
Well, to respond to your questions, I think for all intents and purposes, when I've talked to the residents in Brightleaf, it's not about the southbound movement on Route 109 that they're concerned about, it's the northbound. And basically the trip's identical, except, again, they want to go northbound, and there's an alternative that would not require them to go through the construction zone. Southbound, they would, I would assume, continue what they're doing now, go to the signal at Taylor Road and Route 100, head west, and just work their way through the roundabout in the construction zone, or take Taylor Road to Manchester Road, which will be a construction zone shortly with Manchester Road Phase 3. So pick your poison. So I see it more as a northbound movement, not so much a southbound movement, because there's an alternative that's equal in, I would say time. Traffic studies have been completed, both as part of the development of the Brightleaf subdivision when going through the zoning and approval process at Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council, and as part of the Route 109, Route 100 improvements. There were traffic studies completed as part of that. The queuing at the lights is premised on that traffic study, and for the most part, we've gotten some complaints about the delays, but it's during the peak hours at AM and PM, and they are monitoring the lighting there, so as if it gets too excessive, they can adjust it to let some go through, more go through than less.
And I just have one more last question. I know construction continues to go in this area and they have large equipment. I guess all the houses that are along the Taylor extension are built, so we wouldn't need any construction equipment on that actual road to finish construction of houses?
No, you're absolutely right. Any construction and traffic equipment associated with Brightleaf would be on the internal streets. There is no home site that has direct residential access to Taylor Road extension. And as you can see, there's common ground separating the home sites from the Taylor Road right-of-way. And those common ground areas, for the most part, are pretty substantial. And the sides of the houses face it, not the fronts.
Okay, thank you.
Ken?
So actually, this is a question, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'd love to have a little dialogue on this if it's allowed. I'd love to hear Councilmember Grignani's thoughts on, and some other folks, because I just don't know how this plays out. So in the summary statement, it says, with this action, the city will assume all obligation liability for the roadway and release of the development entity of any further responsibility in this regard. Just makes me a little nervous when we're not complete with the project.
He's asking you.
Yeah, am I allowed to do that?
Sure.
All right.
Cheers.
I'd love to hear your learned opinion.
I don't know how learned it is, but I can tell you where we usually are. These roads are constructed in subdivisions like this to the specifications of the city of Wildwood with the expectation the city would take them over to maintain them and also to maintain snow removal as well as repair of these roads. So there's a specification as to how the road should be constructed, which I'm sure Mr. Vunich has made clear to the builder. So it was built with the original intention and expectation that the city would eventually own this street. And so that's inevitable. In fact, we will probably own most of the internal streets as well because we'll have to snowplow those and maintain them like we do in every other high-density subdivision in the city of Wildwood. So that's no surprise to me. I think my only real concern about this is what I know from past experience about the cut-through traffic situations. This is a road that's going to catch the dickens, on occasion, and maybe more often than occasionally. And I can just hear the complaints that will eventually well up on this. They may not realize it now, but sooner or later there's going to be somebody come in, the Public Safety Board, and just raise the ruckus because people are cutting through here and they're speeding. Because the officer back there can probably confirm what I'm going to say next. We have had this on every street in the city of Wildwood through subdivisions where people come in and they complain about speeding. And the worst of it is a lot of times when we catch people speeding on these streets, it's the people who live there, which is really frustrating. Okay, so I'm just telling you that's kind of where you are. But as far as owning the street, that's inevitable. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And then are there going to be speed bumps?
Well, we have 2 sets of speed humps, and those are at the pedestrian crossings from the villages at Brightleaf to the existing trail along the north side of Route 100. And then we have the 2 roundabouts. Along with those, we've done studies, and other experts much more knowledgeable and learned than I have looked at the difference between no curb, rolled curb, and vertical curbs. These are vertical curbs. They actually help to slow down traffic because they kind of pinch you in. It's a visual aspect, and as I say, they've done studies on it, and they do seem to work better. Dr. Gragnani, Councilmember Gragnani is correct. No matter what we do, people speed. It's part of the responsibility of the police department, but we've taken traffic calming into account.
Joe?
Yeah, I was agreeing with a lot of what Councilmember Gragnani mentioned tonight. He's right on point about the cut-through. But I also feel that we need to find a way to put some relief, probably more from an emergency perspective, because of the southbound traffic on 109 merging all into one lane and then backing up, especially now, I think with the past few days with 100 being closed, diverting all that traffic up through the ramps and around the roundabout. It's probably slowing things completely. So I feel like I would sleep better knowing that if there was some kind of emergency vehicle that needed to go south on 109, that they could go through Taylor Road, that section there, and then get to 100 and Taylor right there. But as Dr. Gragnani mentioned, once people start to understand that that's an alternate route, they will start to use it some. And so what we usually hear about, and it's the number one probably complaint I get when I talk with people, is that it's speeding on the street. So do we have, or have we ever explored with like those temporary speed bumps, the ones that you can put down and, they're kind of big that, you do want to slow down, otherwise it shakes you up a bit. Have we ever tried with that? Mr. Cruz, you're nodding your head, so I'm assuming you've got some good.
We have experimented with it. I think Dr. Gragnani is on the Board of Public Safety. Dr. West dislikes them a lot.
So even the emergency services doesn't like them, yeah. So
They do jostle you because there are.
Yeah, there's a height, quite a bit of a height, so it does. So Dr. Gragnani has his pen up, and that's usually his sign of wisdom there, so I'm going to let him talk.
Again, I don't know if it's so much wisdom as it is experience. We've dealt with speed bumps and humps many times. When Gary was captain of the precinct, when Captain Tanner was captain of the precinct, and recently there has been less tendency to do that, and the reason is that the streets that we did have some speed bumps on, the people wanted them gone, and they're now gone on Green Trails, Green Pines.
Pines.
Yeah, Green Pines. They took those out because the people didn't like them. And I can tell you they're a nuisance, and they're a nuisance for a lot of reasons. Cars that are low to the ground, a lot of modern cars scrape on them. They are bumpy to go over. You have to slow way down. What people were doing is, because the fire department doesn't like them to be all the way across the street, we were putting a cut in the center of them. So what the fire trucks do is they straddle them. And guess what? People straddle them too. So that means they have to cross the center line in order to be able to straddle the hump. It's rather different for a fire truck to do that because they're an emergency vehicle, but for a car, we really don't want to promote that. So bottom line is, I hate speed bumps, don't like speed bumps, never liked them. Nobody else seems to like them, and they really don't fix anything. The question is, what can you use as an alternative? Well, there hasn't been any good suggestions of that, except to say that on some occasions we've used some stop signs, although that's not a really good solution either. I think you sort of have to wait and see what's going to happen. One thing that does work, that has worked in the past, is they have these signs out we can put up on some of our poles and posts that record your speed when you go through there. It does have a tendency to get people's attention, so that it tells them that they actually are speeding. You know, you can't leave them operational all the time, because then they get used to them and they just ignore them. You only have to put them up once in a while, and that sort of sometimes cuts it out. But those are issues that can be discussed by the Public Safety Board, when and should those issues come before them.
Yeah, and just, about the speed bumps, again, you're right on point. They're not a perfect solution, and even temporary. It sounds like we've practiced or tried with them and it doesn't work. But yeah, the signs that display speed do raise awareness, and I think also the best is always just having a presence. People then know that there's an officer sitting there, and they're not going to try to pass by at a high rate of speed. So thank you.
We had them for a while on Forest Leaf Parkway, and I think it did make a difference. And Ward 5 is the ward that I represent, and we did end up taking the speed bumps out, particularly the families that lived right there on Green Pines. The noise issue, backing in and out, people trying to sell their homes. So I'd hate to see us put them in again just to turn around and take them out. Ken?
So in efforts to help Councilmember Garitano sleep better and Dr. Gragnani to not bring his blood pressure too high, I'd like to make a motion to accept Taylor Road Extension for public maintenance and upkeep as written.
Second? Crystal? We still had a couple people who wanted to make
I'll
comments.
second that, but I want a discussion with Joe about something.
Crystal?
Mine.
You were. Yeah.
So my last question, you brought up a good point. So southbound traffic to turn onto Taylor, how many cars can get in that left turn lane?
That's a good question. I've queued in it. There's usually not a lot of traffic. If we're talking about, you're on eastbound 100,
No, on southbound 109.
southbound
I don't
109.
think anyone
Oh.
I've ever seen anyone use it.
Yeah,
It's about one or two cars.
yeah.
Because it was,
To make a left onto Atherton,
Mhm.
southbound 109, I'd venture 4 could queue in there, maybe.
I just worry once the word gets out that we all line up left to avoid the construction, and it's merging down to one lane, and that's the lane to be in because the other lane shut down. So when we stop traffic here, we're causing a bottleneck on the roundabout. So I'm just a little concerned if we can monitor that.
Certainly can.
I'm supporting the motion, but I just think that might be a concern once the word gets out to do the cut through. I personally wouldn't do it. There's too many roundabouts and speed limit problems, but I know that the word's going to get out and people would rather prefer easy than sitting.
I'll ask Mr. Brown when he returns from vacation. He's our professional traffic operating engineer, PTOE, see if he's looked at it and what he can explain.
That's fine. Thank you.
So I have a couple questions, Joe.
Yes, ma'am.
As you know, we've had quite a bit of concern because of the way the construction's going in Brightleaf. There always seems to be something happening that shouldn't be happening, like this morning, with them arriving too early in the morning. So my concern is the construction trucks going down Taylor Road and then onto Atherton. Do you feel like we can go ahead and accept them and that there won't be any damage to the road?
Well, the older section of Etherton Road is already under city maintenance, so we're not changing anything there. And the crux of the discussion tonight is pre-acceptance of the road to accommodate the request of several different parties. The road, as was discussed when Fisher Frichtel asked for the traffic generation assessment fee credit, is built. It's a collector, but it's built at a higher standard than even an arterial. So if any street that we've built of recent times can accommodate the heavier traffic, this should be it. We built it to a standard we hope would last a long time.
So you feel like it's built to standard?
I think it can accommodate it. Yes, ma'am.
And then my other question is, when you go down 109 North, it's really hard to see the Etherton Street coming into 109. So I don't know exactly what you could do there, but since it's in town center, maybe you could put one of the lighted street signs up, just something to catch people's eye, because it is hard to see.
We'll take a look at it. I know there's some vegetation that goes down that little tongue, so to speak. That may be part of it, and certainly if additional lighting would work, we could investigate that.
Thank you. Dr. John?
Yeah, I just want to ask a question, one more question from you, Joe, on this. The motion is pending, so we're discussing on this motion, but question reference to this motion. If we accept the roads now and you don't have them actually finish the whole thing up to standard, are they willing to come back and do that even though we've already accepted these roads?
No, sir. The intent is to have them complete any and all improvements identified on the punch list, and thereafter, the responsibility for any repairs after construction would be the city's.
Well, then that shouldn't bother Fisher and Frichtel.
No, it should not, but again, we are requiring them to fix the road, and as I mentioned, we did require them to build the road to a higher standard than their expectation.
And they will do that?
They already did.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? So we have, yeah, I was going to ask Gary that. Gary, will you restate the motion, please? All those in favor?
And be accepted by the city.
I'd like to add a little bit more. I think you wanted it with punch list.
Yes.
The completion with the punch list.
That's what the maker of the motion said, yeah? And I agree with that second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. And the next item on the agenda under action items is concerns regarding Cox Creek erosion issues, wards 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, the department is acutely aware that the erosion task force has been established by City Council. That task force will be meeting shortly to discuss its charge and begin its process of investigating the 9 watersheds in the city of Wildwood. The watersheds, I believe, are like fingerprints on your hands. They're all distinctly different. They have some common characteristics, but they also all have their variability. Amongst those 9 watersheds, Cox Creek has always been the problem watershed from a lot of different standpoints. The development policies of St. Louis County placed an enormous amount of stress on the watershed, and as part of that, the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District did not have a good set of stormwater management standards. Combined with increased density beyond the carrying capacity of the properties and the poor standards associated with stormwater management, we ultimately ended up with the conditions we see in Cox Creek at this time. The reason the department is focusing on Cox Creek is that with the task force, the addition of the 8 other watersheds gives it a large, it's a lot on their plate, so to speak. And the problems we're seeing that have started again in the last year in Cox Creek demand a little bit more quicker attention. And so from that perspective, the department has identified 3 items it would like to proceed forward despite the task force being established and in place and to meet shortly. Those are identified in the department's request. First and foremost, the department would like to proceed forward with its field investigation with Dr. David Hammer. If weather permits, we're going out tomorrow. If not, next Wednesday. But we'd like to proceed forward. Dr. Hammer brings a different perspective in that he spent approximately the first 9 years of the city in that creek at doing investigations. He has a large inventory of historical photographs, and the intent is to revisit those areas that we used as kind of our bookmarks and see what they look like now, try to attribute if there's been change, either minimal or substantial, or somewhere in between, and then for the most part, begin forming an opinion on what's happening and why things are changing so rapidly again. The second would be to create an inventory of stormwater management facilities in Cox Creek, particularly those older facilities, detention basins that, in the opinion of this department, aren't functioning at a level that provides much protection to the natural environment of the watershed. And then finally, the department would like to invite Dr. Hammer to do a presentation after the site visit, both to this committee and to the task force as discussed with Dr. Remy when we met just a week or so ago to kind of talk about the kickoff of our meetings with the task force itself. Again, the department understands the task force role and that ultimately all information that is developed will be presented to the task force and this committee and ultimately city council. But I just think there's something going on in Cox Creek right now that is kind of baffling, and the department would like to get out there and start looking at it sooner than later. And so that's its request tonight. Thank you.
And I really appreciate that, Joe. I think we can't start too soon. I would like the Evergreen Forest Drive included in this.
Okay.
They've had substantial erosion. They've lost trees. They've lost half their backyards. So I think that would be an important place to go with Dr. Hammer.
Consider it done, ma'am.
Thank you. Dr.
At the risk of maybe jumping ahead a little bit, because I know the task force hasn't met yet, but I had a little discussion with some of the experts and some of them who we've worked with in the past, who basically said that the only way to tackle this problem now with Cox Creek, which has been a problem since before the inception of Wildwood, was to tackle the upstream problem first and then work our way downstream, correcting the necessary deficiencies. And we needed experts to know how to fix that problem to the best of their ability. I don't know that MSD is either capable of it or was willing to do it, to be honest with you. I know that you all would like to get money out of them to do it, but I don't see that happening with them. I think, unfortunately, it's going to take the city to do some of this repair work. I agree that something has to be done, but this is a lesson for the future. We cannot allow this kind of development willy-nilly without some protection of these creeks to occur in the future. This was done before Wildwood. It's not your fault in the planning department of Wildwood. It's the planning department that you previously used to be associated with many, many moons ago. And they just didn't do their homework very well. And unfortunately, we're now the victims of this, and the people who live along this creek are the victims of this. So they'll let this be a lesson for Wildwood into the future. But I think that in order to fix this now, it's going to take experts and a lot of work starting upstream in order to fix this problem. I'm not opposed to trying to get something out of MSD. I just don't have a lot of hope that we're going to achieve that goal. It's kind of like working with MoDOT. Anyway, that's my gripe for the night.
We appreciate that, sir.
Katie?
I just wanted to thank you for putting this on the table and raising the bar a little bit. I have seen along Cox Creek, the subdivision I live in backs up to it as well, improvements in some areas, which I'm like, why is it a problem here and it's improved there? It's almost like the water's diverting, and I don't know if that's due to some of the construction from MSD that they've been doing further north as they've been replacing their components or not. But let's make sure that the consultant also looks at the impact that the activities that MSD has been taking on the last couple of years, do they have an impact on what's occurring in this watershed?
We'll certainly identify that to Dr. Hammer as well.
Any other comments?
Joe, I think this is fantastic. And as we spoke last week, actually, this is fantastic. Get this established because we're hopefully going to get a time to meet soon with the task force, which is what our plan is going to be, with an email going out to the task force, hopefully by the end of this week, once we can settle in on a time. So this is a good start to get to the triaged areas that are going to be more important. And just let me know what time you're meeting. I'd love to join you guys.
Be glad to do that. Ms. McCutcheon also wanted to walk the portion over by Evergreen, so we'll do our best.
Miss McCutcheon will be out of town,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Well, like I say, tomorrow isn't looking too promising with the weather forecast, but I do want to make one statement. Part of what I'm going to ask Dr. Hammer to look at, particularly in the area of Cox Creek from Route 100 north up to about the Valley Strecker Road area, is have we contributed to the problem? First and foremost, we ratcheted down the density substantially for new projects in the Cox Creek watershed. We went from 3, 4, and 5 units per acre to 1 and 2 at the most. We've also implemented tree preservation, grading, natural resource protection. I think it all worked, and for many years it seemed to be working, but as we've noted on a couple of occasions, we're starting to see the same things we saw back right at the time of the incorporation, these blowouts like by Dr. Remy property. And so it's really a difficult problem, and I don't know if we've helped, if we've maintained the status quo, or now if we've added to the problem. So hopefully we'll get some answers to all of those questions.
Any other comments?
If there
What
is
do you
no,
need from,
oh, sorry.
what do you need from us?
If there is no objection, I don't think I need a motion, but I'd like to proceed with the 3 steps identified in the memorandum. Thank you.
Under park matters, we have 6 items for consideration. The first one is bid results for Al Foster Memorial Trailhead Overflow Parking, Ward 6.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the committee, we recently opened bids on an overflow parking area in the next to the Al Foster Trailhead. This is located down in Glencoe off Grand Avenue, and the city's participation in recreation and parks activities in the Glencoe area is long. That was in fact one of the first rezonings the city did, was to rezone from non-urban to parkland a large number of properties that St. Louis County had acquired in the 93 flood. So we've started and been active down there since 96 and moving towards a kind of recreation hub. In 2003, the Al Foster Memorial Trailhead was opened. It was, thank you, Joe, it's shown in the Hatchet area. It was a very small and one of our first trailheads. It was about 15 parking spots, but it was a gravel lot, so it could never be striped. If people weren't very kind in their parking, it didn't accommodate 15 cars. At the time, it was suitable. The trailhead was the Al Foster Trail was just beginning. It's just in its infancy, and so the number of users was pretty small. Throughout the years, the city and as well as the state of Missouri have continued, and GRG have continued to increase recreation uses in the area, and so user activity has increased. A little further west down Grand, where it turns into Washington, the city added Glencoe City Park in 2008. There's about 30 to 40 parking spaces within the Glencoe City Park parking lot, but again, it wasn't quite enough. So the city then entered into the endeavor to build the Al Foster Memorial Trailhead. At the same time, we also opened Bluffview Park up on Old State Road. There's an extensive amount of parking up in Bluffview. In fact, it's generally underutilized at this stage, but more people start on the flat areas in the bottom and use the Al Foster Trailhead and then go up to Bluffview. So as the popularity of this area has increased, the need for parking has increased. And there's also the user of the Wabash-Frisco Pacific Railroad down there. So they're only open on Sundays from May through October, but add all of the users on the trail, which GRG has measured, has done counters on some weekends. There's thousands and thousands of people that are going in the trailhead. So if you add up the 30 to 40 parking spots at Glencoe, you add the almost 50 that we've added at the Al Foster Trailhead, you add the gravel lot that the railroad has, and it's insufficient. So at the time the Al Foster Trailhead was built, it came down to budget and came down to numbers being crunched, and the parking lot to the west was eliminated. So the original Al Foster lot. It was, the gravel was removed and it was returned to a play area. It was on the original bid to be retained as additional parking. But again, as we crunch numbers, it just didn't work. So we kind of are reverting back a little bit now. So in an effort to accommodate these issues and accommodate the number of users, we've worked through this committee over the last couple of years to provide an additional parking lot. We tried to use the first bid that we had, which was for $67,000, and it would have kept the original gravel lot, only it would have been replaced with Ritter rings. So grass grows, but it can hold the substantial weight of the parking. The city attorney said we had to rebid the process. It had been too long. So we rebid and had enough in the budget to cover the $67,000, but the bids came in at $90,000, including the original bidder, who realized, I think, that he missed something the first time around. So at $90,000, we didn't have it in the budget, so we've put it off. So in December, some of you, City Council approved for the 2019 budget $90,000 to build the Al Foster Trailhead Overflow parking lot. So we went back out to bid, and we just opened those bids in May. And as you'll see, can you give me the next slide, please? Thank you. We received 7 bids. All were competitive and showed a good range. The base bid the lowest bid came in at $72,000, and that was Krupp Construction. So we could build the parking lot substantially under budget, but that's a gravel lot. So when the department started looking at the bids and the add alternates that were included, we started evaluating what would it cost if we included add alternate 1, which is an asphalt surface. It means we will get the 39 spaces because they'll be striped, and it means our maintenance costs over time are just going to be much less. So the department's recommendation is for Byrne & Jones to get the project with a base bid of $82,800 and add to that add alternate 1 just over $18,000. So we're cognizant that it's $11,000 over what's in budget, and we would amend at the mid-year, we would put that $11,000 in there. But we think that if we go with the low bid, to use a favorite phrase of my father's, we would spend $1 to save a dime. We'd save a dime up front, but in the end, we're going to spend 10 times as much. In his math, but we would spend more in maintenance and probably have a parking lot that's underutilized. So again, the department's recommendation would be for Byrne & Jones at $101,090 to construct the parking lot with an asphalt surface. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
My family utilizes this, and I see the traffic congestion. I've been following this for several years with your committee. So I'm in favor of this, and I think that you guys did your homework with the budget and continue to look at this. So I would make a motion to accept your recommendation as presented to move forward with Byrne & Jones with the additional of, looking at the end review for the $11,000 shortage.
Yeah, I would echo those statements. I've been down there, and it has been jam-packed over there, especially with the railroad and the beautiful weather on the weekends. That parking lot, that grassy area right now.
It's already a parking lot.
Yeah, it's just filled with cars, and so, people are just using it, and we may as well get it done the right way. So it's a destination. You got to support that.
Councilmember Graham nodding.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for you. The money that we're going to allocate for this overage is coming out of where?
Right. We'll have to amend it at mid-year budget to put in the, but from the capital improvements, it'll come out of Community Park Phase 3.
So you're going to take it out of capital improvements? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's already in capital improvements. So we're just going to, at mid-year, shuffle from Community Park line item to Al Foster.
Okay, I mean, I think this is a worthwhile project. It's probably worth the money, and if we put it off, we're going to wind up paying more later. But somebody needs to watch that capital budget because we've spent that down to a scary level to me. Because when we looked at the budget before the first of the year, I wasn't real happy with that number. Okay.
Understood. It's tight.
Just to give an explanation, in the fall of 2018, we budgeted $1.7 million for park. The bid came in at the $11,000 isn't coming from $300,000. We were able to just shifting $11,000 out of that.
Well, I can tell you this now because what I just told you, because not only are you the director of planning, you're also co-city administrator. So congratulations, right? Anyway, that's just a concern. So the city council needs to see that number, that budget. I think and be reminded about that all the time, right?
And across, guys are looking at how the funds, the capital funds were combined, and the third plan for shifted operating that are more capital in nature. And we understand that reserves, at least in terms of capital improvement, we're all looking at maybe a little bit of what I would consider belt-tightening and lowering of expectations relative to the number of projects we do here. That may all change with the 2020 census when we see the bump in the population forward. But the plan is all big.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Gary, will you restate the motion, please? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The motion passes. The next item is Wildwood Greenway Corridor, Phase 6, Ward 1.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, this is more of an update than anything else. As the memorandum explains, Phase 6 of the Wildwood Greenway Corridor, which was originally to be from Community Park West to Miller Road along the north side of Route 100, has been a project of consideration for a number of years. In fact, for many years it was funded as part of the capital improvement program, but other priorities and other obstacles would appear, and it just never came to fruition. As maybe a few of you might remember, during the budget process last year, residents of several subdivisions on the western end of the proposed route by Mueller Road came and spoke and expressed disappointment that the project had never come to fruition, and they were hopeful that in a short period of time they would see progress in that regard. The City Council concurred and set aside $225,000 to begin that extension to the west from Community Park now. The Department of Planning and Parks, through Mr. Cruz, undertook a grant application with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. The grant would have allowed us, we believe, to double the distance, or almost, if not, make it the entire length from the western entry the westernmost point of Community Park to Miller Road. One of the conditions of that grant is that the trail, if funded, has to be guaranteed to remain in place for perpetuity. Since the trail was in state right-of-way, we asked the Missouri Department of Transportation to accommodate that, and they would not. Their position is the right-of-way may be necessary for future expansion of Route 100. Therefore, the Department of Natural Resources rejected the grant. So the first point here today is that we are proceeding forward with the final reviews and approvals, given the project has been delayed for a substantial period of time. And the project will now go from the access point into Community Park on Route 100 to Pond Road. The extension will get us closer to our ultimate goal. It'll also get us to Pond Road, where there is an existing trail system on the south side, as well as on the west side of Pond Road that takes you south to Manchester Road. And then hopefully on our widened shoulders, and you can get to Rockwood's Reservation via Glencoe Road. So first and foremost, I wanted to update you on the status of the grant application. I don't have good news there. We are working through the re-reviews and re-approvals with the state of Missouri. I believe we're getting very close. And then we'll bring back the plans once we have all the comments from our review agencies incorporated. So you can see it one last time before we go out to bid. And we will request authorization to bid. Again, bidding does not obligate us to the project. We may end up either being surprised or hopefully delighted with the bidding environment, but we are proceeding forward unless told otherwise tonight. Thank you.
Dr. Green.
I'm sorry to be such a pest and ask so many questions, but I have to,
are.
okay? That's part of my job, right?
Yes, sir.
Can you put that last slide back up, the one you had there? Okay, so we're coming out of the park and you're running parallel to Highway 100 down to Pond Road. You're out of the right-of-way with that drawing?
No, we're at the very top of the right-of-way. That's why the boardwalk section is necessary.
Okay, do we have access, that piece of property, it's on the corner, the northeast corner of Pond and 100, does that belong to us or not?
We actually were in negotiations to acquire it many years ago. We were unable to reach an agreement with the property owner. The property owner basically put it as such: I want a certain amount of payment, and I want you to accept a less than 3-acre lot so I can do 4 lots instead of 3. The terms of the acquisition just weren't favorable to the city.
I see. Okay, well, can we claim a piece of that for the trail, as a right-of-way for the trail?
If you were to do condemnation, but other than that, we would have to negotiate. We can make this work within the right-of-way. The amount of money we have which was based upon an engineered estimate, should accommodate it. But again, with the bidding environment, we've been fortunate of late. I hope that luck continues.
Okay, the next question is, it's going to terminate at Pond Road currently, okay? There's no shoulder, there's nowhere to go down Pond Road. I assume that you would want to connect it back across the street to the south side trail at Pond and 100, is that correct?
Reluctantly, yes, because it's a dangerous intersection.
How are you going to do that?
That's a very good question. As you know, the state of Missouri is studying that intersection at this time. Part of our request was to take into account pedestrian movements as well. If Mr. Garitano has trouble sleeping at night about placing people too close to Route 100, I have trouble sleeping at night because of that intersection.
So, tell me about it. I have to drive through it several times a day.
You know it better than I.
Oh, yes, and it's very scary. It's becoming increasingly more scary. But, okay, so that's a problem in itself. Of course, I don't want to encourage people to try to cross that highway there because that's deadly. We're going to get pedestrians run over there, so that's a problem. All of these projects are worthwhile. There's not a question in my mind that doing them is not a good idea. It's a great idea. There's 2 issues. Number one is the money, which is a big issue, and the second one is how we connect all these things together in a reasonable fashion without killing people in the process. And I guess we haven't worked those details out yet. The thing is, if we build that out and we terminate it there, we're encouraging people to go to the terminus of that, and then they're going to say, gee, let's go one step further and cross a highway. You know, I'm cringing, you see? So that's my concern about that. But
It's a very legitimate concern, and I cringe with you, but when the original project was designed, it was intended and funded to go from Community Park all the way to Mueller Road and make that the primary path, so to speak, for pedestrian and other users. The idea being, again, that on Mueller Road, where we have easements or dedications almost enough to make a connection to the north to Babbler State Park. We don't have that yet. But I guess the question to the committee is, do we do it incrementally and potentially create a problem at Pond Road and Route 100? Or do we basically wait until we have full funding to take it to Mueller Road?
how are you going to cross Pond Road?
Obviously, there are ways to achieve that. The safest way, or the safest ways, would be a tunnel or an overpass for pedestrian purposes. It's not programmed as part of this segment of trail. I would be hesitant to support it without knowing the ultimate design of the intersection itself. Because again, we're looking at changing that intersection to improve safety for vehicles first.
Yeah, we don't know what the state's going to do with that yet, and that's a pig in a poke. And my final question, I promise, is what is the cheapest route to go? Do we do this incrementally? Is that cheaper than waiting to? I mean, somehow or another, I get the impression that waiting is not a good idea because prices tend to go up. So that's kind of where we are. But then on the other hand, we just had a discussion about what we have available in the budget. So it's a dilemma and a half. And I'm going to shut up with that because I've given you enough headache.
Well, please don't quiet down. You're here to answer questions, and it helps us as we try to work through some of the issues we've identified and some we haven't that need to be identified. Typically, what I would say is mobilization is always a line item in any bid for a project of this nature. If a project has 2 mobilizations, that's twice as much, so there's increased cost. Oftentimes, too, in projects like this, if there's an area that needs material fill, it usually comes from another part of the project. So if the project's longer or greater in size, we can usually balance it better and save money there. A substantial cost is the haul-in of material when the site is light, so to speak, or unbalanced. So there's an argument that larger projects are more cost efficient. But as you say, oftentimes what we've found is when we've delayed projects, when we come back to them, the cost is increased because of materials, salaries, wages. And one of the areas we're seeing the greatest amount of increase right now is the soft costs, the design and engineering. There's a shortage of engineers and everybody's having to boost pay, which I guess is very good, but it also is reflected in the cost of the project at the end of the consideration. It's a tough situation at Pond Road and Route 100. I can't say it isn't. It's bad for vehicles. I think would be even worse for pedestrian and bicyclists. But we've made a commitment to get the trail west. The best approach we have now with the grant not being awarded is to do it in segments. So I guess we're looking for your guidance.
Katie?
Joe, have you thought about if we're concerned about people crossing over 100 or tending to go down to Pond, can we put some kind of signage at the end of that terminus and state travel south, north, or west at your own risk? Or something. I know that sounds silly. But the number of people that just go, oh, I'll just keep going down the road. Is there some way that we can say this is where it ends, turn around and take your ride back the other way?
Well, it's not silly. We just do it a little differently.
Well, you probably have more tact than I did in
Well,
that
it
statement.
just basically says, high speeds, traffic doesn't stop, be aware of visibility. We try to warn them in a roundabout way to say, don't go there. So it's not silly at all. Certainly, we could look at signage. What I would ask, I know there may be other questions, and I'll be glad to respond to them along with Gary and Kathy, but I probably would ask that this could be postponed. And let me talk to Mr. Brown about how he would address a pedestrian crossing here if it's not a tunnel or an overpass,
Yeah,
a bridge. Maybe if I can get you that information and we can talk about it with Mr. Brown's participation, maybe we can alleviate some of our concerns.
I just don't even know if the flashing light's going to stop people going west or east on 100, though.
A lot of the bicyclists, they challenge fate every day out here in Wildwood, so even if we told them stop, don't go, it almost seems like we're throwing the gauntlet down.
Yeah, if we proceed with this, I prefer like a bridge over the top of it.
Over what, Pond Road?
Over 100, so they don't cross.
Yeah. As you can see with the project at Route 100 and Route 109, if you don't have favorable topography, you're digging down a lot. And so, yeah, sometimes the pedestrian bridge is the preferred alternative.
Crystal?
Pardon me, you probably know this. Or is it on the schedule of when they're going to redo the pond intersection? Does MoDOT have an idea?
No, ma'am. We, at the urging of the Board of Public Safety, council people like Dr. Grangdani, Rick was able to get them to do an analysis. We're expecting an analysis any time. That'll be the first step. Then we'll go from that analysis to options, hopefully pick an option or two, and then start on trying to understand how much, what it entails, how much it costs, and who would pay for it.
Sure.
And
So
Dr. Grangdani will tell you who will pay for it, not the state.
yes. So with that, I would not be in favor of moving forward without understanding what MoDOT's purpose is for that intersection before we even address this at all. I'd like to understand what they're going to change in that area and then talk pedestrian bridge. I do agree with that. I don't think what they're going to do or change without putting a stoplight in is going to be safe, which I don't think that's an option at this point. So I would like to postpone on the recommendation of consulting Mr. Brown further, and also until we hear back from MoDOT. I wouldn't be in favor of moving forward right now.
Dr. John?
Yeah, just for the sake of education of this committee, for those of you who haven't been around doing the kinds of things I've been doing the last several years, Pond Road, although I live down Pond Road and I have to deal with it, I'm not asking for things to be done because I live there. I'm asking things to be done because it needs to be done. We had a fatality there a couple of weeks ago. Somebody was killed trying to go across that intersection. The intersection has become very cumbersome, very unpredictable. There are some sightline issues that Rick realized when he went out there and looked at it. We've talked to MoDOT about signalizing the intersection. They ain't happy with that idea at all. Rick said that they've been talking to him about the possibility of putting what's called a J-turn in, which is if you come up Pond Road going south and you reach the intersection, you would turn right, go down, switch over to the inside lane, and then make a hook turn back around to go east. A little bit cumbersome, but it flows traffic a little bit better without the necessity of a signal light. So that's one possibility that may happen and may be a reality there eventually. We don't know that for sure yet, but that's one thing they've talked about. But something has to be done with that because it's a very dangerous place now, and we've had a number of accidents. The accident reports, and I haven't looked at the recent one in detail, but in the last reports, the three biggest accident intersections in the city of Wildwood were Taylor and 100, which is amazing to me that one could be that way, but it is. We've had a couple of fatalities there. And then Pond Road is number 3, and number 2 is Route T and 100. So we have several of these intersections along Highway 100 that are real problem childs, and they're all going to have to be addressed sooner or later. But Pond right now has become a big one because of the construction going on at 100 and 109. People are now ducking down Pond Road to use it as a cut through a bypass to get over to BA and then eventually out to the north end of 109. And that road's really not meant to handle that kind of traffic. we're trying to keep the 18-wheelers off of there because they absolutely cannot be down there. So that's the history behind what's going on there, and that's going to be an ongoing problem, and it's not going to solve itself soon. Thank you.
Any other comments? Jody, you need an action from us?
Well, there's a motion on the floor for postponement. I believe Ms. McCune made it. I don't know if it was
Do we have a
seconded.
second?
So postpone.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Joe, if I could take a liberty for just a minute. So if we go back to Al Foster Trailhead, is it possible to use the CDBG funds to construct the ADA parking?
We'll investigate that. Again, community development block grant funds can only be spent in census tracts that have low to moderate income levels. Glencoe does not had, but no longer fits that description. Seniors are considered low to moderate income individuals. That's why we can use it in senior programming in Wildwood. The federal government's made that determination. I would argue it as a senior, but we'll investigate it. We can call down to Department of Planning at St. Louis County that administers the block grant program for the federal government in St. Louis County and ask.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3 is the summary of feedback from the senior open houses, all wards.
Thank you. As was just referenced, thank you for that perfect segue into our senior open houses that we held. So we have started senior programming a couple of years ago. The Department of Parks and Recreation took those over last year, and we've steadily increased those to more than 150 program offerings for 2019. So we have 3 exercise classes a week. We've done a creative writing class, and now we've started partnering with Stonecrest. We did a recent Staying Healthy Later in Life lecture in there. So we've had some feedback from the people who have attended our fitness classes, exercise classes, and just in general that they're very supportive. They want to see lots more senior programming. So we had 2 open houses to try and gather not only feedback on what programs they'd like to see, but how do we best communicate with this demographic. It's not an email-based SMS, let's download the Parks and Rec app. They're lower on our spectrum of those types of users. So we wanted to get that kind of feedback and thought face-to-face over a cup of coffee was the best way to do it. So we held 2 open houses, one in April and one in May. A lot of the feedback was very similar, as you can see from the list on the screen. They love bus trips. They want somebody to, and frankly I do too, but drive you down to the Cardinal game, let you out where it's a little closer, and have that ride back home. It's kind of called Uber, but I'm all for it. So, but with a group, Uber with a group. And so then there was also input for more social gatherings, just the opportunity to have some interaction and in a quiet environment and play cards or have a cup of coffee and just visit and make new friends and things. Other socials like barbecues, and then a lot more fitness classes. There's a big push for Tai Chi, Zumba, line dancing, those types of things. And then lectures, so things like having doctors come speak to them on heart health, nutrition, different things with downsizing, how does that process work, and what would be recommended. So we had about 14 individuals come. We also discussed different ways of notification and the like. And they really expressed, some of our neighbors are doing senior programming very well. City of Chesterfield, and there's some other non-for-profits in the areas that provide a lot of programming, more than, frankly, our staff, which you're looking at the entire parks staff right here, could accommodate. So we've had some discussions after these open houses, and really we're just opening it up for discussion. We can have that discussion tonight, or you can kind of think about it, ponder on it, and give feedback back to the department. What do you think that your constituents would be interested in? What types of facilities, activities, programs, lectures, the like, should we be offering to seniors within our community? And again, we fund about $25,500 a year. We change that money sometimes for ADA things, the curb ramps and such. But we have about $50,000 right now in dedicated to senior programming that's available for use. So again, we're welcome to have the conversation tonight, or if you want to provide feedback later, but the department's really looking for your all thoughts on this.
Ken?
I think this is fantastic. So I was going to talk to you offline, but I probably will do that. So a number of your lectures and stuff, I've got a number of folks I think that we can come and bring lectures free of charge to a number of these folks in both senior populations and also young parents too. So I think there's two populations that could benefit, and I've got a cadre of folks that would be happy to come and talk on these issues and advanced directives and some other things.
That'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, we do have, for those of you who might be new, we do babysitting 101 class through Children's Hospital, and we do a home alone class. But we're always looking to expand those offerings as well. So it'd be great. Thank you.
Crystal?
So this pickleball discussion is real hot in our HOA, and we have 600 and something homes, and we've striped our tennis courts, and they're asking us to set it up for pickleball. They're actually discussing that this evening, so we have a lot of public input. I guess from the city standpoint, I don't think that we have a large crowd that's interested in it, but they would like to have it. Does the city ever want to rent out like private facilities to allow like a senior pickleball night that we can maybe present to an HOA? Because I know there's several. I think that Nantucket did the same thing. They're always looking for ancillary income to utilize what we do have and maybe open that up to something like the city could for our residents. Is that a possibility that we could bring to an HOA?
I think it would be a great thing and in line with our Parks and Recreation Action Plan. The city always looks for partnership opportunities, especially where we don't have facilities. That's where we offer swimming pool passes at Ellisville and Baldwin instead of building our own swimming pool. We support the Pond Athletic Association because they offer something that the city doesn't have. So those are definitely opportunities. And the next item on the agenda is to discuss, we have a couple people that have really pushed for pickleball, but if those courts exist somewhere that is not on city ground and we can, offer some type of partnership, I think that's definitely something that is worth investigating and worth talking about.
Yeah, I'll bring it to the board and see what they say. Thank you.
Sure. I love the feedback that we have over here from conversations that I've had and also seeing what some of the programs in other areas and communities. Looks like we're right on point with some of them here, but I think accessibility for our seniors is important. I know we have some seniors that are in great health and are driving, especially up in years, but there's probably seniors out there who may have difficulty driving around. And so if we look into options, whether we have maybe once a week, twice a month, we'll pick you up and bring you to the town center type of deal, come back a few hours later, take them back to their communities. I think that's an option to get some people out of their homes or make it coincide with some type of event targeted to the seniors. So I know we are doing work with the seniors and there's activities going on. I mean, the calendar of events that the Planning and Parks Department puts out. I mean, you've got senior yoga, water fitness, all different types of activities. And I think that's phenomenal. So if we can maybe provide some accessibility options and see how that works, that might be an option to get folks out. And then I think they like to socialize. I mean, that's really what the point is. And we have an ability to build community here with our seniors if we have like a regular cadence. Maybe it's the second Wednesday of the month is coffee and danishes and card games during the afternoons. It becomes part of the routine and an opportunity for people to get to see each other. And we may have opportunities to partner with folks like Stonecrest, where they may have facilities that are more suitable for this kind of stuff. So I think we're heading down the right path, but we could do that. And, I saw over here some bus trips. I think those are great ideas as well. I mean, maybe, we can have a Wildwood sponsored a senior event for a day baseball game or something like that, where it takes them down there, brings them back. The seniors will feel like they're getting a lot more back from their community, and really instill pride in what Wildwood does. So I would love to see more of this come to life.
Yeah, three things come to mind off the top of my head. Number one is there are some of them who like to do bird watching, which you can combine also with photography. Those are things that you might do. You can go to Babbler State Park or Rockwood Reservation in the morning to do observation with birds, and to maybe take pictures, other wildlife that might be available as well. So those are things to think about. And therapeutic horsemanship for those who are a little bit more vigorous and like horses. Maybe you could work out something with the therapeutic horse people down here on 109 and see if some of the seniors could actually go there and do a little supervised riding. So, I mean, we've got a big horse community. I'm sure they'd like to show off a little bit. Maybe that's something you can do with them.
That's good.
Ken?
I'd also, so I think these are fantastic ideas. The other consideration would be, I'd love to know from your experiences if any of these folks, besides doing these activities, would be also interested in something interactive with members of the Wildwood community, such as, I'd love to know some of their backgrounds. Mm-hmm. I think this is an invaluable, untapped resource of folks who have got really wonderful stories that I would certainly love to not only learn from them myself, but impart upon my children. But there may not be great venues to do so. And so it would be really nice to hear a little bit about, if folks were interested, about sharing some of their history and teaching us their history. I think that would be really unique, and that would build community, as much of us have said already.
We did, just for a little history, in 2017, we tried, we had one successful and then the other we lacked enrollment. But we had the Senior Creative Writing Group do almost like a camp with middle schoolers, and it was like this graffiti workshop, but they talked about writing their stories, but in a more youthful way through the graffiti. The creative writing class that we've offered for the last few years it walks them through about a 10-week class on writing their memoirs. So it may be interesting to take that one step further, and when they've written their memoirs, maybe they want to share them and talk about them and the like. And that's another thing over at Stonecrest. They've, they work hard to get their stories. They have a number of authors that live over there and a few other things. So we've talked about kind of getting more of their history and learning from them and from that. So
I think that's great. One thing interesting is also there's an opportunity perhaps to pair some folks up with members of the WA community. So could you give you an example? So at Miller House a couple months ago, I had suggested to the owner about having a storybook hour. She does. She'd love to have some more readers. This could be a really unique opportunity to get some of those authors perhaps to go out to Miller House and engage with children and read children's stories and work with members of our community in the business world.
Great. Thank you.
Any other comments? Piggybacking on what Joe said, there are other communities who have times and locations where senior citizens go to have coffee and donuts. It's very successful. And then there's also communities that have adult transportation systems, which is also very successful. And I think it's needed. Like you said, some people can't drive, they can't get out. So I'd be very in favor of looking into that. Any other comments? The next item is resident requests for facilities. We're about to run out of time, and I know we have to go to. So
I'll be very brief. Madam Chair and members of the committee, before I start this brief presentation on this particular item, I do want to thank you for the input. That was very good, and I have a list full of items, a page full of items, I should say. So we'll work on those and put together a more comprehensive list and get them back to you so we can start targeting them and hopefully putting them into practice. As Kathy mentioned during her presentation on that particular item, senior programming, we are getting a number of requests from residents for certain types of active facilities. And those requests seem to center on two. pickleball and sand volleyball. And sand volleyball was brought to the attention of the committee previously, and we had a brief discussion on it. Really didn't get too in depth in it and end up with a direction. So tonight, the department has prepared for your consideration a inventory of available park space under the control of the city of Wildwood that might or might not be able to accommodate a court type or volleyball type surface. And as you go through the inventory, I think you'll see that for the most part, the best location or the location that might work best is Al Foster Memorial Trailhead and the Glencoe City Park area. It's flat. Some is floodplain, some is non-floodplain, but sand volleyball or a hard court surface might be appropriate. And so, first and foremost, the department is wondering if you concur with the location, acknowledging that the residents down there had expressed reservations about too much activity and too much noise. And then secondly, if not a location, do we want to put this on our budget discussions about the cost of a pickleball court or sand volleyball courts, how they're managed, things like that. There's a lot of research that goes into it, and I think Ms. McCune is going to do a little of it for us with regards to private facilities that are leased by the city. But I guess we're just wanting to know, is the Glencoe area a good location to start? And if not, we'll look elsewhere. And is this something we want to put on the budget schedule?
Katie?
I just want to understand, because I thought we were just talking about not having enough parking in Glencoe, or did I miss that?
We'll add to the problem
Yeah.
by adding facilities. I can guarantee it.
Okay.
But the problem we face is,
That's
like-
about the only flat space we have, so I understand that.
yeah,
Unless we put something in the community park, which kind of tends to change its design a little bit.
so yeah, there, as I say, reluctantly to a certain degree, because when we were doing the Al Foster Memorial Trailhead, the upgrade, the Glencoe residents came out and in numbers and said, we're living with what we got, but if we start adding much more, it's really going to overwhelm us. And I recognize that, but when you look at the area, like Anniversary Park is a kind of a misnomer. It's 14 acres in size, but almost 12 and a half acres of that is the creek and floodplain. So there's really not much available land there, and you can read the rest.
Crystal?
So I see on Bluffview it wasn't recommended, but on the top where the parking lot is, the center island, could we reconstruct that, since we don't have a large amount of parking people utilizing that space up there, to maybe reconstruct on top of the bluff? And it's a good area. There's not a whole lot of homes. I mean, there is the one on the, I guess there's two. But what I'm going to see, just so you know that I played volleyball, is they're going to want lights next, because they like to play at night, because we all work during the week and nobody can play during the day, and the sand is a lot cooler. So if we're going to go to a sand volleyball court, just know that that's going to kind of go downhill, and the requests are going to get a lot steeper, because I don't want to play sand volleyball on the weekend. It's more during the week for leagues.
I do want to mention that not included in this list is the 6 acres to the west, because again, we're not sure what we want to do with that, but that might be an option as well. So, given what we have on our agenda, we have 2 more items under parks, and then we have a couple of closed session items. Again, this is for information. Think about it. We'll put it back on the agenda in a short period of time before the budget starts, and we can maybe revisit it in August, then talk about it during the budget.
I think
Thank
Ken had a comment.
Is it possible to find out from the company that's going to do the potential parking, if they're out there at the same time, are they able to asphalt a pickleball court
I can certainly ask him. I know
and see
they,
if we get a cheaper deal?
Burns and Jones, that's their business, asphalt, so I'm sure they'd be glad to do it. But I guess I would warn, if we did it without notifying the residents and giving them an opportunity to comment, we probably wouldn't be too successful, at least in terms of public relations. We could have a pickleball court, but we'd probably have a lot of people mad at us. Not the pickleball players.
Not only that, it might smell like pickles. I mean, I don't know what that.
I'll ask Mr. Keitel what it all entails and maybe get a cost estimate, and we can look at it. Thank you.
Joe, before we go into closed session, there's a couple items on miscellaneous.
Oh, yeah. Yes, thank you for reminding me.
welcome.
Over the course of the last day or two, I'm sure you've all been exposed to the discussion relating to the concerts and who introduces the band and welcome the attendees. In past years, it had always been the mayor. Our mayor obviously owns a business in Eureka, has a busy schedule, and oftentimes isn't available. Mr. Stevens contacted me before the May concert via email and requested that he be able to introduce the band. I did not respond because, for the most part, the mayor had been invited as well. At that time, when the concert was about 5 minutes from starting, the mayor was not present. I unfortunately did not see any other city council members, although some were in attendance. And Mr. Stevens asked if he could, and I had no reason not to say yes, I guess. Mr. Garitano recognized that and asked if he could do it. And I said, we probably need a policy. And so, for the most part, what I would like to do is explain the circumstances, apologize if I've created a problem. Gary, Kathy, and I are usually busy at the start, so it's not a good time for us to be up on stage trying to address the public. And I think it's preferable to have an elected official, actually, than city staff members. So I'll maybe turn it over to Mr. Garitano. I know he had some thoughts on this, and with the permission of the chair.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks for starting that up. And Joe knows I've attended these concerts with quite regularity over the years. So it was a bit of a surprise when I had a resident come up to me and say, "Hey, why weren't you up there?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And that's when I found out that Councilmember Stevens had gone and done the introduction, which is why I asked Joe. I said, "Oh, is this something new we're doing so that we can understand better? How do we sign up for this or whatever it is?" But there's no policy in place. And so, as Joe mentioned, there's been a couple emails about, I think, a desire to want to do some. And so how do we do something that's fair and equitable across, giving all the members of the council an opportunity? The mayor did propose, and I think Councilmember Remy suggested that, it was mayor proposed that he would do the introduction, and then any council members who are in presence and in attendance are welcome to join him up there. So I think that's an opportunity where at least it opens up and makes it fair for whoever's there to do that. But the mayor did say, I think, in his email that, certainly if there's objections to that approach, that we could look at other ways. So, again, I think it's just being fair because, we've got residents and constituents out there, and certainly, again, big surprise, shock to me when I first heard about it, and I asked Joe, did I miss an email somewhere or something like that? So,
Ken?
Mr. Winich, how many concerts are there in total?
There are 3 during the summer series, 1 as part of the back-to-school party, and then there's the concerts, 2 concerts or 2 bands that celebrate Wildwood.
I have a different idea. I'm just going to throw this out to the group here. As much as I love being on stage and introducing people, which I do, and I think, sure, we can have council members do this, I'd love to see something different. I'd love to see us have a different member of our community do it. Whether it's Mr. Kramer's child who, snow plowed people's driveways to raise money, or that young model that made our city proud a couple months ago in the news, or whether it's somebody else. I think that Mr. Messenger can, and I think that's pretty cool to bring them out to our concert and let them announce the band and make a couple announcements if we just give them the information ahead of time. I think that makes it more of a community. Frankly, I think people don't need to see their politicians all the time.
Dr. Gragnotti?
Yeah. I like that suggestion. I think maybe a city administrator could do it once in a while when we get our permanent city administrator back. I don't think the politicians really need to be up there. I'm sorry, but I don't really want to be, so I would want to be excluded from the rotation anyway. But I agree with Ken. I think they don't really want to see us. We're just making political statements. The heck with us. I think it's the community that needs to say something, you know? So that's just one poor councilman's opinion from Ward 1.
Crystal?
I just want to make a statement that I was at the concert as well, and I understand the concerns, and I've read through the emails today, and I see the concern overall. I don't think that Councilmember Stevens did anything that was egregious or anything that was out of line, so I do want to make that clear. There was nothing said that was untasteful or inaccurate, and I think that some of the emails that I read today seem to kind of lead to that in some respect. But I think that you guys are absolutely right. Nobody wants to see us. I'm there to see a concert. I don't want to hear about city business. If I do, I want to look it up online or talk to somebody else. So I think that Councilmember Remy's recommendation to have somebody from the community or the kids or something fun that we just give them an opportunity with a microphone to get up there and introduce, I think is dead on it. And it eliminates anything that we have that's going on currently and trying to pick who is who and the mayor, if the mayor's not there, who's going to step in. So I like your approach. If we can get something lined up, I think that would be better for our community as a whole. So I support that measure.
Joe?
Yeah, I think that's a fabulous thing. I mean, that's kind of why it opened up a can of worms, all of a sudden now. It's something that we've been doing for years that has been fine, and then all of a sudden now we're changing it. So it should be about the residents, and if that's the way the committee hopefully will support and agree, I think that'll give the opportunity for residents to feel like they're giving back to the community. So, and that way it keeps it out, because otherwise we have to make sure we treat all folks fairly.
So with the committee, Katie?
Just real quickly, from a logistics standpoint, how can the council help you locate those individuals, identify who those should be, so we can get maybe this filled out for the rest of the summer and through the fall, so that you're not knocking on doors the night before going, would you do it? Would you do it?
Well, first and foremost, what I would like to do is kind of take what you've just described, put it down on paper, and then have you adopt it, so to speak, as a policy that then would be forwarded to City Council. So I think it's an excellent suggestion as well. Secondly, to answer your question, Ms. Dodwell, within your network that you've developed over the years with going to homeowners association meetings, campaigning, maybe people that you would like to offer it to, and then they could submit their names, and before the concert we could do just a lottery drawing. That's just, we put them all in a hat, we shake them up, or we could do it by ward, and we could start in 1, or we could start in 8, or start in the middle.
That's a good idea.
We could, but I think the chance is kind of nice, and then we would know that the person would want to participate if they submitted their name. Some people are a little stage fright, some aren't. Some would relish the opportunity. Dr. Gragnani does not want to, so we have tomatoes and tomatoes.
Crystal?
I was just going to say, I think it's great, but the veterans that we've moved out here and they've built those homes recently, they've gotten some good PR through the newspaper, and just to, get up and applaud them for their services just here in the city of Wildwood as residents, I think that would
Great
be
idea.
something that we should look at, definitely, for maybe the remainder of the year. I think we have quite a few that can fill the schedule for the rest of the year. And then maybe next year start looking at other things if we get into a crunch. So it's just an idea if we want to reach out. I think that you are familiar with who those people are, Joe.
If there's no objection, we'll do that and see if they'd like to participate.
Would you be amenable for this Friday or no?
I believe the mayor is going to take care of it this Friday because it's part of the board and appreciation reception event.
Yes.
But we'll have July and 3, at least 2 in September, 2 in August. I'm forgetting my month. So we'll see what we can do.
And I'll be happy to
Do you need
help.
a motion?
Do you need a motion? I'm sorry.
Actually, I would, but prepare the policy and to reach out to those individuals. That'd be great.
Okay. So I would like to make a motion on what Mr. Vunich is requesting. Yes.
second it.
Okay.
It's fine.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The motion carries.
Very quickly, Ms. McCutcheon and several others in the room attended a pre-construction meeting out at the Ward 5 Park location. The selected contractor, New Mean Construction, will probably be starting right after the 4th of July. And Ms. McCutcheon was interested in a groundbreaking. I had a memorandum on the groundbreaking in the packet 2 weeks ago. There was no comments, no questions, and so I wasn't sure who would attend or not. So I would like to set up a groundbreaking at Ward 5 Park. It's kind of been an interesting process for the last 11 years. And so tonight I was wondering if you all would like to attend, and if you would, could you send me some potential dates? We could do it late afternoon, early evening, a weekend, just if you'd like. But I would like to do it sooner than later because the construction's going to start shortly. Yeah, if you would, that'd be great. Thank you.
The 25th, 26th, and 27th, I'm out of town.
So we'll avoid those dates and see if we can work something out.
So everybody want to email Joe
If
the
you
next
would.
couple of days and
Yep.
set a date?
And then we'll get the project started.
So, are you ready to go into closed session?
Yes, ma'am. There are 2 other items, but if you have questions, certainly just feel free to reach out to Gary, Kathy, or I. But yes, I would respectfully request a motion second and a roll call vote to go into closed session under the particular item identified on the agenda.
I'll make a motion. We'll go to closed session.
Crystal, second?
Second.
John, seconds. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Grignani?
Yes.
Councilmember Remy?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember McKee?
Yes.
Councilmember Garritano?
Yes.
Chairman Cutler?
Yes.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
All those in favor?